The Nintendo Game Boy. The most successful handheld console of all time. I always wanted one when it came out, but I didn't get it. Now many years later, I have both the classic Game Boy and the Game Boy Color. So let's compare the two. Image. Let's take a look at the screen and see which one is better. The classic Game Boy has a monochrome screen, with its characteristic green and yellow tint. Playing it now, the ghosting is very apparent, as the refresh rate on the LCD is not very good. The size and resolution on the Game Boy Color are almost the same, but the image is much clearer. The ghosting is dramatically improved, and you also have color, even for the classic games. A point for the Game Boy Color. Sound. Let's listen to the music. The sound is much better on the classic Game Boy. The sound is louder and has less background noise than the Game Boy Color. That's a point for the classic Game Boy. Controls. Let's see how they handle. The Game Boy Color is smaller, but it also means that the D-pad and the buttons are also smaller. I feel it's a bit cramped for me. For my big hands, I feel the classic Game Boy is much more comfortable to play with. So a point for the classic Game Boy. What about the portability? Let's see which one is more portable. The Game Boy Color is obviously smaller and lighter, so it's better for carrying around. Another point for the Game Boy Color. Battery life. Let's see how much the batteries last. The classic Game Boy takes 4 AA batteries for up to 30 hours of gameplay. The Game Boy Color takes only 2 AA batteries for up to 15 hours, so they are the same performance-wise. It's a tie. Game library. Let's see which one has more games. The Game Boy Color is backwards compatible with the classic Game Boy, and also plays Game Boy Color only cartridges, so it wins in that regard. Another point for the Game Boy Color. Coolness. Let's see which one is cooler. I'm old school, so I find the classic Game Boy cooler. Like the Atari 2600 controller, and maybe even the NES, the classic Game Boy is not only a console, it's a video game icon. Another point for the classic Game Boy. Let's see some other differences. The classic Game Boy has a contrast dial to adjust the screen. The Game Boy Color has an infrared sensor, which I never used. Also, the link cables are different for each console. Now let's take a look at the final score. In the end, they are both tied. It just comes down to convenience or nostalgia. For me, I'll take the classic Game Boy. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.